So, in this particular episode, I will be discussing a Reddit question. And interestingly enough, for a lot of Kenyan women, this is such a common question that's being asked because the question is a pretty simple one and it says, and I quote, "Is there any good man in Kenya and more specifically Nairobi?" I don't know. It feels like a very bland, very simple question, but once you kind of get into the nitty-gritties of it, you actually realize that there's a lot more that needs to be said than just the typical yes or no. But anyways, this is something that I will have to discuss. But before I do that, I should have started properly by giving an intro and everything, so where are my manners? Welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one breakdown podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who still likes his women, just the same way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is raw, so no, I keep it short, I keep it simple, and I take it straight to the point. So, very minimal editing, zero instrumentals, but I will try to get the job done, because I go straight to the main topic. Now, for this particular episode, it wasn't like an individual thought that I had to think through. It was actually something that I saw on Reddit not too long before I actually even recorded this episode. Because it was a post that was posted up on Reddit under the Reddit Kenya handle. And it's actually a pretty simple question. And also very, very common. Kind of like the way I said it. Now, the question, like I said earlier on, is there any good man in Kenya, or more specifically Nairobi? Now, the person who asked this question goes on to say, and I quote, "I think I am giving up. I am a very accommodating lady, but I just keep finding men who either want sex or just a good time but nothing serious. I don't know if my soulmate exists." End quote. Now, of course, this being a question that was very centered towards Nairobi, Kenya, this was something that I just had to hop on to because first and foremost, I am a young man living in Nairobi, Kenya. I do consider myself a good man, which, of course, depending on the babe that you'll ask, you may get a different answer, but all in all, I do think of myself as a pretty good guy and I know a couple of good guys here and there. And to say that there are no good men in Nairobi and all of them just want sex might seem like someone's jumping the gun a little bit. But at the same time, I can kind of guess where they're coming from. Because I have spoken to a couple of people, more so women, interestingly enough, and they're sort of, pulling away from dating because they believe that there's no good Kenyan men in Nairobi. And, whenever I'm having this discussion with them, I'll go into the whole market dynamics of it where I'm like, the problem is either you're looking in the wrong market, you're looking for the wrong things in the market, or your search criteria is all shit. But considering that I am planning to do that in a different episode, I can leave this one aside. Plus also, this one actually has a couple of specifics in shit. Plus the babe is saying that, she's still out there dating and she feels like she is giving up hope and everything. So I guess we can probably treat this with its own kind of specific treatment. Now, first of all, from what she said on the text, she did mention that a lot of the guys that she has been getting have either been trying to shag or just trying to look for a good time. Of which I'd have probably started by asking if she's probably using short-term mating strategies or short-term dating strategies or like dating requirements on someone that she's trying to go long-term with. But fortunately enough, she probably took most of that work off of my tray by actually listing down a little bit further down when I looked through the comments, the kind of qualities that she looks for in a guy. And, hers actually pretty simple, pretty general. Because she says, and I quote, "I need a very respectful man. First of himself, then myself. A man who knows what he wants. A man who's hardworking. A man who is the head of the house and takes charge. A man who loves kids and can take care of kids. It doesn't matter what he does or what he earns, but he has to make a living for himself." End quote. Which, when I kind of read it, it actually seems pretty simple. Of course, there's some babes that are like, oh, you need to be more specific, you need to outline other qualities, blah, blah, blah. But at least as far as she's gone, it does seem like pretty good information. And with this kind of criteria, I think you can sift through quite a number of guys that are just jokers. So the question is, why does it still seem like she's getting them? Now, honestly, from the top of my head, the first thing that just clicked in my mind was maybe the question is if they're just trying to sleep with you or they want to sleep with you first before they date you, because that's actually a thing. And for this, I would probably like to throw a bunch of blame to the sexual liberation movement that has been going on for the past couple of years, if not even the past decade or so, of which a lot of babes were pretty much told, you should shag a guy and not worry about body counts and it should be okay and it shouldn't be an issue, of which now that meant a lot of babes started giving it up a lot easier for guys. And thus, a lot more guys now, and even babes, now actually look at sexual compatibility as a thing. Now, when you look at sexual compatibility, that can kind of twist things a little bit for a lot of people, because some people do not believe in having sex, not unless if you're in a relationship with them. And they'd want to form that connection first, then get into a relationship, then you guys can have sex. And for the people that are all about sexual compatibility, going through that, it might actually not seem like a particularly good idea, or it might seem like a waste of time. And as such, you find that a lot of the people that believe one and a lot of people that believe the other, whenever they come together, they sort of end up at an impasse. And the unfortunate side of it is the person who's looking at sexual compatibility will be looked at as someone who's just trying to have sex with the other person. Of which I don't think that's very much of a thing nowadays, because nowadays you don't need to lie to a babe that you want to date them so that you can shag. You can shag them without even trying to date. But anyways, all that aside, if we stop nitpicking and actually answer the question, does Nairobi actually have good men? And the truth of it is, yeah, it does. It actually has a couple of them here and there. I don't know all of them. I can't pinpoint them all, but it actually does have good men. Because I would not believe that the entire market is shot to hell with absolute assholes and pieces of shit. I honestly do not believe that the entire dating market in Nairobi is full of guys like that. There's a lot of good guys that actually do exist. And you want to know something interesting? Those guys are also saying that there's no good women out here in Nairobi. Like, that's the interesting thing. There's babes that are saying, you know what, I'm not a demanding woman. I'm a very understanding person, but there's no good men here in Nairobi. And then there's a bunch of guys that are also out here saying, you know what, most of these babes have been ran through their hoes, blah, blah, blah. So there's no good women in Nairobi. So maybe we might actually be looking at this a little bit wrong, because if there's good men saying that there's no good women and there's good women saying that there's no good men, the problem isn't that they are or there aren't good men and women. The problem is finding good men and good women in this Nairobi, of which that now becomes a new problem, which is a connection problem. And the problem now becomes not the fact that there's no good men or good women, but rather the places that you thought you could probably find good men and or good women are the places that just don't have them anymore right now. And that one I totally agree with. The whole good men, good women argument, I could debate that one from here till kingdom come. But the places where you thought you'd find good men and good women not being there, that one now I can start to agree on, because a lot of the places that were traditionally considered as good hunting grounds for mates aren't working all that great nowadays. Because a very simple example is churches. When you look at people back in the day, they believed that if they went to church that they'd find a good partner. You'll find quite a number of older women who sort of still believe in this concept, because even during their time, they knew that they would find a good mate if they went to a church or maybe some other religious area where, wherever it is your religion kind of congregates, of which I'm not sure if it's going to be the same thing with all the other religions, but at least I know Christianity, so that's the one I'll stick with. Now, a lot of people used to believe that you'd get a good partner if you went to church, but nowadays, I wouldn't vouch for that, especially if you're a guy, because when you're going to church and you're trying to pick up a babe, you don't know if that babe is either someone who's just going to church for appearances and they're very hypocritical about the kind of casual life they live, or they're a very judgy person. And, they're very opinionated and they believe that a lot of the people that go out clubbing are probably harlots or some shit. And the issue is, because it's mostly just those two kinds of babes that will go to church, you kind of wouldn't want to go there, not unless if you're particularly comfortable with a babe who's judgy, even though they do end up making for a good wife. With the women, I'd probably say that the success rate might actually be better, although at the same time, you are going to find pretty much a lot of the guys that fall under one of those two categories. It's just that there's a lot fewer guys that are about appearance and going to church, just mostly because if you're the type that's very secular and you love doing your shit out there, you probably don't give a shit about trying to give an appearance in church. But all in all, it just shows that if you're trying to look for a mate and you're going to church, it probably isn't going to work out all that well for you. Now, of course, you can go to the dating apps because they are platforms that are specifically made for dating, but the they're actually worse than even going to churches, because most people who are on dating apps nowadays in Kenya, at least the Tinders, the Bumbles, the Hinge, most of them are just trying to shag. So that kind of puts it at a bit of a worse spot here. So maybe now the question that we need to ask is, if the main places where we thought we'd get a connection and the dating apps are both failing at this, then is there really a solution? Now, truth of it is, I actually think there is. And it involves a little bit of strategy, but it doesn't involve that much thinking. Because at the end of the day, it just mostly involves you actually sort of strategizing the kind of qualities you'd want in a person that you'd consider to be a great mate, preferably qualities that require them to be outside of the house. Not unless if you're a burglar, but I don't think there's any burglars in this particular case study. So preferably something that's more outdoors. Then you sort of plan yourself and go for events that have those outdoor activities, or just have those activities listed as like a part of the events and shit. So, for example, if you feel like you're an adventurous person or you're looking for an adventurous person, then going for hikes would probably be your best bet, because you could find potential people after going for, a couple of different hikes every so often. If you're someone who's into gaming, there's gaming conferences that'll happen where you can go and you can meet and network with different people. If you're into fitness, then maybe going for a gym class, or maybe just visiting your local gym and working out from there, or even trying out other gyms, could actually work in your favor. And gym classes also do tend to give quite a lot of people, a sense of togetherness if they go for a bunch of those classes together. But anyways, let me just try and conclude all of this by saying this. Are there good men in Nairobi? Yes. Are they there in plenty? I don't know. Can you really find a number of them? Yes. Is it going to be easy? Probably not. But provided that you get out every so often, you put yourself out there and you strategize and visit the places that have the highest likelihood to have people with the qualities that you would consider a quote-unquote good partner, you shouldn't have too much of a big issue in terms of finding someone. All in all, it's a cold world out here, and I wish you all the best. But so far, that has been it from me, Sir Denver B. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end. If you do want to give your feedback, whether you agree or disagree, want to add something, then the place to hit me up at is at Breaktime on my side on IG or on Facebook. The DMs are always open. On Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much again for listening all the way till the end. Regular episodes resume from next week, Tuesday, and I will catch you guys on the next break.